Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner, where I'm going to be sharing with y'all my weekly meal plan for my family of 4. So I'm going to be starting off strong with this chicken Cordon Bleu soup. This one really grabbed my attention. This was a new to me recipe, and I'm telling y'all, it is absolutely delicious and it's really quick to throw together. So to start off, I got my Dutch oven out and I'm melting down 4 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just sauteing in a big spoonful of minced garlic. And after cooking that garlic for about a minute, I went ahead and added in a 1/4 cup of just some plain all-purpose flour, and I'm going to make sure that is whisked well in with the butter. If you like onions, you can saute one in with the butter before you add the garlic and flour. So here I'm adding in 3 cups of chicken broth, and I'm also going to add in this small container of half and half, which is equivalent to about 2 cups. And I'm going to be using some onion powder, and I decided to throw in just a little spoonful of this roasted garlic, better than bouillon paste, just to kind of strengthen that chicken broth flavor. So once I got that dissolved, I'm going to add in some cream cheese. The recipe does call for 8 ounces, and it does need to be at room temperature. I didn't realize it, but I actually didn't have quite enough. I probably had about 5 ounces, but it still turned out great. I'm also going to go ahead and shred up this block of Swiss cheese. You need about 1 cup and 1/4 cup. So I just threw all that in there. I have this on about a medium heat, and I just stirred it until it was completely melted. So now I'm just going to take 2 chicken breasts off of a rotisserie chicken that I picked up from Walmart, and I'm just going to shred it straight over the pot. Typically when I buy rotisserie chicken, I take it home, shred it, and store it in the fridge for all of my recipe needs. But I went grocery shopping this day, so as soon as I got home, I started making this soup. So it was actually still a little warm. And side note, something that drives me crazy that I have noticed with my camera and filming, anytime I make something like white or yellow, the lighting on my camera just goes crazy. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's bright. I really don't know how to fix it. So if there's like any tech savvy people watching, if you could comment on any tips, I would greatly appreciate it. But now I just added in about 1 cup of some diced ham. This ham is from Christmas that I froze. My dad sent me home with it, and he got it from the Honey Baked Ham Company store, which, if you know anything about that, those hams are really pricey. So I was sure to not waste any of it, and it paired so good in the soup. The recipe doesn't call for any pepper, but we love black pepper here, and I thought it went really well with it. But you basically just heat that through to your liking. I did it for about 20 minutes, and that was it. I topped it with some parsley, and I served it with some Red Lobster biscuits. I was going to make it from the box, but we went to Red Lobster the day before for lunch, and they sent me home with a little take-home bag. So I just heated those up, and it made dinner even quicker. But again, you guys, this soup is a must make. We all absolutely loved it. If you like chicken cordon bleu, then you will love this. It has all of the flavors, super creamy and cozy, and I'll say it every time, we are just a big soup loving family. We recently got hit with a huge snow with lots of ice. It was so bad that the kids didn't have school for like 1.5 weeks. Today was their first day back. So basically, we were snowed in the house for a few days, and 3 meals out of this video, I had to just work with what I had at the house. I couldn't go to the grocery store. So this was one of those meals. This is a queso taco rice skillet, and I was really happy with it. So I started off by browning up 1 pound of ground beef. I seasoned it with salt, pepper, and onion powder, and I just let that continue cooking till it was all the way cooked through. If you have a lot of excess grease, definitely drain it. I didn't, so I didn't really fool with it. But I also added in a big spoonful of some minced garlic, just the stuff in a jar. Saute that for a couple of minutes, and then I added in 4 cups of chicken broth. You can use either taco sauce or tomato sauce. I already have this tomato sauce open in the fridge, and I wanted to use it. So that's what I did. You only need 1/4 cup, but I definitely use a little more than that. Again, just wanting to get rid of it. I threw in some dried oregano, and you need a packet of taco seasoning, which I just had this bottle. So again, I eyeballed it. I probably used a little more than a packet, to be honest, but you know, just extra flavor. I have this on about a medium-high heat, and as soon as it came up to a boil, I went ahead and dropped in 1.5 cups of some white long grain rice. I'm going to give that a quick stir and wait for that to come back up to a boil. When it does, I'm going to add my lid on, and I'm going to lower my heat, and I'm going to let it simmer for about 25 minutes. So here we are after that time has elapsed. I'm just going in and fluffing everything up, making sure to really scrape the bottom of the skillet to get all of that up. You can always do a little taste test to make sure that your rice is fully cooked. Mine was, so my heat's off. Just threw that lid back on long enough for me to microwave and melt down this Gordo's mild cheese dip with jalapenos. We love this queso cheese dip. I had about half of it left in that little container, so I added all of that in there. I also threw in some dried cilantro and just mixed all of it together. Super kid-friendly, and you can get creative with ways to serve it up. You could do burritos or burrito bowls. We just wanted it as it is. I did have a bag of tortilla chips, so I just threw that on the side and we just scooped it up like a dip. And per usual, I have some lime wedges on the side to squeeze over everything. We all really enjoy this one. It was just simple and quick and good. What more can you ask for? I used to include in these videos when I would go out for dinner. I have not done that in a while, but this was honestly the best dining experience I've ever had, so I wanted to share. This is Snug Hollow Farm Bed and Breakfast. It's located in my town, and it has been around for a while, but this was my first time visiting, and it was just the best experience. They started us off with this homemade tomato basil soup that was amazing. This is a vegetarian place. You don't get a menu. You just get what they serve you, which I'm going to assume that's what a bed and breakfast is. I had never been to one prior, but they gave me this lemon creamy bow tie pasta with fresh vegetables and a salad with their homemade dressing. It was incredible. I want to recreate everything I had here. My favorite part was probably the rosemary bread. I have not stopped thinking about it. And then lastly, this chocolate tart with vanilla ice cream. If you are local and you are watching, you are definitely missing out if you have not been here. On this night, I tried out something a little different. This is an Italian sub-style pizza, and I also tried out a new recipe for broccoli cheddar soup. So for Christmas, I got this new Pioneer Woman cookbook, so I decided to use her pizza dough recipe for the base of the sub pizza. I did cut it in half, so I added a half a teaspoon of active dry yeast to 3/4 of a cup of warm water that's sitting there in the back, activating and getting nice and foamy. And then to the KitchenAid mixer, I added 2 cups of all-purpose flour and a half a teaspoon of kosher salt. So I'm just letting that mix, and then over to the side, I'm just slowly drizzling in 2 tablespoons of some olive oil. Now, this recipe is a little bit backwards from all the pizza doughs that I've made in the past, which I don't mind that. That's what I enjoy in the kitchen, is just doing things a little differently from time to time. But I didn't really like this method because I had to keep on stopping and like scraping down the sides of the bowl. So I prefer to just activate the water in the KitchenAid and then start adding in the dry ingredients. And then also, the measurements were just not right. I don't know if cutting the recipe in half would affect it that much, but it was like pretty soupy at first when I stopped. So I added probably another half a cup or so of flour. It was still a little sticky, so I had to just keep on adding a little bit more flour until it got to the consistency that I know that it needed to be. So don't get mad at me when I say this, but I was a little irritated with Ree, unless, again, if cutting the recipe in half makes that big of a difference. I wouldn't think it would, but I don't know. This recipe just gave me a little bit more trouble than what I was willing to do. So anyways, I'm just taking some olive oil and I'm covering the whole surface of the dough as well as the sides of the bowl so that it won't stick when it rises. I really need to get an oil dispenser because that, big old jug just kind of guzzles out too quick. But anyways, I got that covered with some cling wrap and I let it sit for 2 hours so that it could double in size like so. So now that my dough is ready, I'm going to go ahead and get my broccoli cheddar soup started. So I'm going to start by melting down 2 tablespoons of butter. And this pot drives me insane. I haven't used it in a while, but I forgot how hot it gets. So that butter is like burning before it's even fully melted. Like, that just blows my mind. But I added in about 3 fresh cloves of garlic that I minced up. Saute that in the butter for about a minute or so. And then I added in 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And I'm just, cooking that out for a little bit, and then I'm going to add in 2 cups of chicken broth, which I just use 2 cups of water and 2 teaspoons of some Better Than Bouillon roasted chicken base. And now I'm going to add in a few dashes of Tabasco, as well as a teaspoon each of salt, pepper, paprika, and some ground mustard. I'm going to give that a really good stir, get all those seasonings nice and distributed. And I almost forgot, but I also wanted to add in a teaspoon of onion powder because the original recipe does call for actual onions, so I wanted the flavor without the onions. So now I'm going to start adding in the fresh vegetables. I did some broccoli, of course, and I also shredded up a large carrot. And here I'm just stirring all of those vegetables to coat in that liquid in the bottom. I know it looks like it's not going to work out. I was a little worried, but just trust the process. I covered it with a lid, and I'm going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes. So while those veggies are getting nice and tender, I'm going to go ahead and finish up this pizza. So to my large pizza pan, I just spread it out, and I'm going to pre-bake it at 425 for about 4 minutes. So I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to add a little bit of this Italian dressing. You don't want to do too much because you don't want to make it soggy, but it's just to give it a nice flavor. And I'm taking my silicone brush and spreading that out evenly. And now I'm just going to start loading it up with all the meats that you would add to an Italian sub. I thought this was such a unique idea. I loved it. And my daughter, one of her favorite foods is subs, so I knew that she would love this, and she absolutely did. So to the bottom, I added salami down first, and then I'm going in with a layer of pepperonis, and then lastly, I'm just gonna top it with some ham. I'm using honey ham, but obviously you can use any ham that you want to. And then I wanted some banana pepper rings on my slice. I was the only one that wanted them, so that's why I only added it to one small little section. But I'm going to top it off with some slices of provolone cheese, and that's going to go back in the oven for about 15 minutes. So while that's baking, I'm going to finish up my soup. This is after the 20 minutes has passed and everything's perfectly tender. So I added in 2 cups of some half and half, and I also shredded up an 8-ounce block of some sharp cheddar cheese. I added almost all of it, but I reserved a little bit to top the bowls with. But once it was melted, it was ready to serve, and it was just so incredible. Here's that pizza straight from the oven. Everything melted down perfectly. So once I sliced it up, we just topped it with our favorite sub toppings. So I did some salt and pepper seasoned tomatoes, some shredded lettuce with some of this submarine oil drizzled over the top, and then we always have to have mayonnaise on our subs. Well, Josh and I. So I just added some of that over the top, and then I just finished it with a sprinkle of black pepper, and it was really, really good. I would definitely do that again. And as for this broccoli and cheddar soup, I have always had a tried and true recipe that I've been making for years and years. I've loved it so much I've never felt the need to find another, but this one caught my eye, and I have to say it might just be my new favorite. This was another stuck at home, make do with what you got meal. We're doing breakfast for dinner, which I was not mad about. And the star of the show, at least in my eyes, were these homemade shredded hash browns, like diner style. So I have about 2 russet potatoes here that, as you can see, are a pretty good size. I'm going to peel those with my potato peeler and wash those really well. And I'm just taking a paper towel and I'm drying off those potatoes good. That way they won't be so slippery when I go to shred them. So I'm just going to pull out my box cheese grater, and I'm going to start shredding my potatoes. This goes pretty quickly, very simple. Just please be very careful with your hands. I can't tell you how many times I have cut my hands up on one of these cheese graters. I always just kind of leave the end not shredded. It's just not worth it. So now that I've got all of my potatoes shredded up, I'm just going to transfer those on over to a bowl, and I'm going to get them covered in some ice water. Not only is that going to remove the starch, making these potatoes extra crispy, it's also going to prevent them from turning brown, because they will quickly if you don't get them in water, especially when they're shredded. So while those are soaking, I'm going to go ahead and start my bacon. The brand doesn't really matter too much to me. I just buy what's on sale, and when I want to cook up a whole pack, I prefer to do it in the oven. So I just have my big cookie sheet out with a greased piece of tinfoil, and I like to do it in 2 rows so that I can actually fit the whole pack. I place these in a cold oven and I crank it to 400 degrees. It takes anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. So now back to those hash browns. I'm going to run those through my colander and I'm going to give those a final good rinse to get off any excess, starch, I guess. And I'm just, making sure all that water is drained out, and I'm going to pour it out on some paper towels because you want to dry these off the best that you can. After this experience, I went to Amazon and I finally ordered some cheesecloths. They are actually pretty inexpensive, and that will make this a lot easier, but I just had to work with what I have, but it just took a little bit of time. But to my largest skillet, I'm going to add in some oil as well as a little bit of butter, and I'm going to throw in my dried off potatoes, and I'm just trying to get those in an even thinner layer. I love this steak and shake fry and burger seasoning on anything like breakfast potato related. It always just tastes so good. So I'm only going to season one side, and to be honest, I did oversalt them just a tad because I forgot that I used salted butter. I just had it in a butter dish, so I didn't see the label. But other than that, these were so perfect, so good. I really need to start making these more often. I rarely make these. But anyways, as you can see, I just kind of divided these into 4 sections to make it easier to flip. And as you can see, it got really nice and crispy. I would say it took about 10 minutes on about a medium-high heat to achieve that. And then once you get it flipped over, I'd say you'd cook it for, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 6 more minutes. I mean, you can tell when your potatoes are tender. So now I'm going to get some eggs started. So in another skillet, I am melting down some butter. And I'm going to crack in 4 eggs. This is just for Josh and I. As I am currently speaking, the kids do not enjoy eggs in any shape or form. I've tried. But anyways, we like our eggs over easy, and I really like to season them with garlic salt as well as some black pepper. And just like with the hash browns, when I'm doing a skillet full of anything, I like to cut it up into 4s, and I'm just trying to carefully flip them over. And as soon as I get those flipped over, I am going to turn off the heat because these are like a tad bit more overdone than what we like, but oh well, I did my best. So now everything is pretty much done. There's a shot of those beautiful crispy potatoes. They had the absolute best taste and texture. The bacon was done. That's what it looks like straight from the oven. I'm going to remove that to a paper towel lined plate to absorb some of that grease. And then the last thing I have to do is just simply make some toast. This is the bread that I like to buy, although I really want to start making homemade bread soon. But yeah, I'm just getting that in the toaster. And then when it came out, I just added some butter to it. But here is my plate. I had some avocados in the fridge I wanted to use, so I sliced one up, garlic, salt, and pepper. And then I had some bananas and blueberries that needed to be used up, so I've just piled it all on my plate. And this was absolutely delicious. Meals like this are one of my absolute favorites, and I need to include it into dinner more often. It was a hit with everyone. Lastly, I'm going to be trying out a new recipe for some ranch pork chops. And again, this was a get everything from home type of meal. So I thawed out a package of my bone-in pork chops from the freezer. And once they were thawed out, I dried them off with a paper towel, and I'm just seasoning them with some salt, pepper, and some Italian seasoning. So now I'm just getting those flipped over, and I'm going to season the other side the same way, of course. And you don't have to use bone-in pork chops for this recipe. Any type of pork chops will be just fine. So to my large skillet, I heated up a couple tablespoons of olive oil. I wanted to work in batches. I didn't want to overcrowd the pan because I really wanted to create a nice, beautiful golden brown sear on it. So I just cooked them for a few minutes on each side. I cooked them until they were about 95% done, I'd say, and then I removed those to a separate plate. So here I am repeating that with those last 2 pork chops. Same thing, just trying to get that good sear on it. And then I'm going to get those picked up and added onto that plate. And if you're trying to be healthy, serve them just like that. But I did want to try out this ranch like gravy. So I added in a 1/3 cup of chicken broth, which the recipe actually calls for white wine. I didn't have any, so I'm just deglazing the pan with the chicken broth. I did mince up a few fresh cloves of garlic. So I'm just going to let that cook in with the chicken broth for a couple of minutes. And then I'm going to mix everything else in my measuring cup. So I need 3/4 of a cup of milk, which I had to go next door to my father-in-law to get because I was out. Also a 1/2 cup of chicken broth, as well as 1 can of cream of chicken soup and 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. You need a packet of ranch seasoning mix. I have the big bottle, so I'm just adding in 3 tablespoons of it. And then I need a half a teaspoon of onion powder and a half a teaspoon of ground mustard. That's it ingredient wise. So I'm just taking my whisk, beating that until it's really nice and smooth. And I'm just going to dump that on into my skillet, stirring all those good pan drippings into the sauce. And then once it got nice and bubbly, I went ahead and added back in all of my pork chops. And I'm just going to let those cook on in with the sauce for about 5 or 6 minutes, I would say. As you can see, I am taking my spoon and I'm making sure that they are fully covered. So you just want to make sure that the gravy kind of thickens up and your pork chops are fully cooked through. I paired these with some homemade mashed potatoes, and I also did some roasted broccoli on the side. I like this recipe, but I honestly didn't just love it, and I think a big part of that is because of the Italian seasoning on the pork chops. I'm not huge on Italian seasoning. That's just a personal thing, but I did really like the gravy over it. I thought it was really flavorful. But that is it for today's video. I hope that it motivated you to get in the kitchen and make up some good recipes. And as always, if you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you in my next one.